certainly education was set up so that what are you going to do with the kids? They were in the mines and they worked from, little tots. And yeah, it was just a way of being able to sort of control. And it's the same thing. We've all been controlled. We grew up through that particular system. Right now, when I said it's broken, we have 5-year-olds being expelled from school. Yes, expelled, that type of thing. People don't put children first. Education here was set up for adults, for society, for control, for whatever other reasons, but not for children and for the development of children. And Malinowskis wants to be able to have 3 to 5 year universal education. Another thing of compulsory education. Please object to that strongly, pass the word, because he's trying to break down the nuclear family even more.
Grant, thanks for having a chat with me today. Excited to speak to you. We got in touch through friends or through, we don't even know how, that doesn't matter. You sent me through an article and I can't believe you'd written it 23 years ago, and it's so relevant now as it was, even more so than it was 23 years ago. People like you that have onto this stuff and saw these things years ago, decades ago, just blow my mind. Like John Taylor Gatto, who's got his books that were written over 25 years ago. It blows my mind. So can you share with us what experiences personally or professionally that led you? We can talk about the article a little bit later, but I want to know what experiences got you to the point to write this article 23 years ago.
Oh, wow. You're asking me to sort of reveal a little bit about myself. Truth is most important to me. So is it okay to be able to be off topic?
Really?
So I'm a kid and it's a year 12 camp at Mylor. And someone went and got some drinks and they were having smokes in there and that type of thing. Eventually, a teacher comes in. The teacher says, well, who was smoking? So I said I was, and there was another person said he was, and both of us get taken away from the camp. Everybody was, right? But we're not going to go and say anything about it. It's sort of a bit of a code. So, yeah, I get taken back, whether it was that night or certainly out of the dorm. And we go back and we're there with the principal. My parents come to pick me up. And that was the end of that particular little camp. So one of the things is I may forget the question. What was the question you actually asked before I went into that little story, which was meant to be an example that truth is important to me, all right?
What experiences?
That's the most important thing that I'm sharing, is that whether or not I'm right about the truth, I think all truth is true because it's in the eye of the beholder, if you like. But in terms of me, something's right or wrong. Like the education system is completely broken. It was broken way back. And it was broken at the start of the Industrial Revolution when it was set up.
It's interesting, is it? Because we say it's broken, but really it's working amazingly well for what it was set up for, and it was made to do what it's doing. So it's actually working brilliantly. It's not broken. It's working fabulously well for what they intended. So it's working great.
Well, you can talk for me and I'll try and talk for you, because that's exactly the way I see it. I've said that to people about the current terms and current times, and that's not necessarily what I thought the conversation might be about today, but certainly education was set up so that what are you going to do with the kids? They were in the mines and they worked from, little tots. And yeah, it was just a way of being able to sort of control. And it's the same thing. We've all been controlled. We grew up through that particular system. Right now, when I said it's broken, we have 5-year-olds being expelled from school. Yes, expelled, that type of thing. People don't put children first. Education here was set up for adults, for society, for control, for whatever other reasons, but not for children and for the development of children. And there's a thing called, that I only just found out in the last 2-3 days, about unschooling. It's been going for obviously more than 9 years, maybe 11 years. It could be longer than that. Yeah, the word school is a 4-letter word for me. And I just don't feel as though it serves our society any good. People make statements about let's do something for the future of our children. Education is really important. It's valued obviously in Asia and in Finland and Norwegian areas and that type of thing. Here in the Western world, it's not valued, and it's definitely being totally abused in how it's been set up right now. The indoctrination which is happening is incredible. And I'm so pleased to be able to hear that homeschooling has increased, that the number of problems which are occurring is getting airtime and on the East Sky News and in the print world as well. It just says, okay, there's a problem. However, parents are not taking the kids out of school at fast rate. But one of the articles I read said parents are taking the kids out of school. Yeah. Oh, that's really good. Because if they did take them out when the teachers resigned a while back, there would be a problem. And the governments would say, hey, we've got all these teachers and not enough kids. And so there'd be sacking. Now the situation is they've maintained some kid ratio and they're short of teachers. The shortage of teachers is a massive problem. I just think this scenario right now says, okay, look, we need to be able to consider having a transformation in the concept called education.
Agree. We definitely need a change. And so what led you to that change? That was the original question, which started you telling us the story about getting kicked out of camp. What experiences led you to understand the system and how it was happening and to write that article? What personal or professional experiences have you had that led to your knowledge, I guess, about what's going on?
I had a dream to be a professional baseball player. And so in year 12, when my year 12 teacher said, oh, what do you want to do? And so I said, I want to be a teacher. And he said, why do you want to be a teacher? I said, so because baseball changed in South Australia at that time to summer baseball as opposed to winter baseball. And I said, I want to be able to practice baseball or learn baseball or something during the holidays. All right. That was the reason. He said, don't be a teacher. And I didn't listen to him didn't listen to a lot of people. And certainly there. Look, I ended up being a teacher. I was taught for 30 years or whatever it happened to be in 6 states or 5 states here in Australia, taught in Istanbul and taught in London for 2 terms. It's about 3/4 of the year. For most of that time, it was horrendous for students. The results were such that as a maths teacher, my results were relatively high or the highest for the classes that I had, right? I didn't get to teach the top level of students at that time. And so for me, I was treading water for most of my time there. But I had 3 beautiful experiences. One was over in England, and that was a place called Holyfield. The other one at Surbiton, not so good. At Surbiton, I go for an interview, and at that interview, which is I'm at one end of the table with the 3 people at the other end, and there's 6 chairs between me and their end. And so it took 20 minutes or something like that, or half an hour, whatever, have that interview. And the thing that was brought up that occurred at that school, because they're going through, there was an assessment happening for all schools right around England, and they were concerned about that. But one of the things, because the pressure they were under, and this is one of the problems with children, the pressure they're under, one of the items was about toilet paper going missing in the staff toilets. If that is not sorted out, you will have to bring your own toilet paper to school. All right, that was a staff agenda item. It's like, the pressure that people are under is not good. The other school, I agreed by the principal. He said, come in, we sit down, would you like a cup of tea? Thank you very much. I had the job within 5 minutes. He walks me around the school, shows me everything after I've got the job, and he knows the name of every student in the school.
Beautiful.
All right. That had plenty of open space, et cetera, out by Gatwick Airport. Surbiton inner city environment, it's like concrete jungle, few trees, but concrete jungle, very small in comparison, just out of Wimbledon. And, so they were chalk and cheese, those two different experiences. I was still the same person. So there was a problem at Surbiton. There was 0 problems at the other one. Why? Because of leadership. Leadership is so important. So as a teacher, was I a good leader? No. But if I was to be able to coach Roger Federer, I'd be brilliant. One-on-one, I'm amazing. 1, 2, and it's not the many here, but 1 to the many of the people who are in prison from age 5 through to age 17. And I'll repeat that. There are 7 letters there, same as there are 7 letters in the word schools. They're in prison, or prisons is 7 letters. All right. And it's not fair to kids to be able to have their dreams ignored for 20 years or 17 years, right? They just don't get to be kids. It's important that we let kids be kids, and important that we let them play. The unschooling process, which is more to do with the way I like it, is they set the curriculum. They don't have, like in homeschooling, you have to still the state has some way of being able to describe and tell kids what they need to do. Kids learn 24/7. Just, they can't help. They learn all the time. If we fill them with an environment of love and joy and freedom, they will find out for themselves that, yes, I just broke my ankle. Okay. Yeah, look, they'll learn the hard way sometimes, but they don't need to learn the hard way. All right. We have people who are animal whisperers and can communicate with other things. There's a world outside the world that is being allowed to be given to children. And they have that ability to be able to create in play amazing experiences. I just remember with my grandmother, the only person I had who gave me unconditional love, and I was able to play all day except for going to the shops or whatever it happened to be. The rest of the time I was able to play. I had total freedom to be able to do that, and that was a joy. And then the cousin came and we could play together, but I just had the freedom to be able to do that without, in my case, there was physical abuse at home. But kids come to school, and at the moment, in the current scenario where I said it's broken, we've got children who are not going to drink water. You know why? Because they don't want to go to the toilets. And the reason they don't want to go to the toilets is because stuff happens there. One school in the country has the B and the G taken off the doors. And this is not the only school in South Australia. This means that any child or student, if you want to talk about high school students, any child or student can go in there. All right. Teachers are not allowed to go in the toilets. I used to go into the toilets on yard duty when I was a teacher way back in the 80s. All right. Teachers are not allowed to go in there. So this particular school has one pregnancy a year. Back in late April, early May, right, in a 4-week period, they had 6 pregnancies. That's where it's happening.
When they're going to the toilet, they're getting...
Yeah. Now, this is not what you wanted to talk about. I'm just saying there's a lot of stuff going on at the moment, and part of that is bullying. Like this is all to do with the sexual exploitation of children, which is a worldwide phenomenon happening at the moment. There's a 10-year-old girl, 4 10-year-old boys are bullying her because they want to take pictures of her with that clothes.
In the primary school or high school?
With only 10. So this is a primary school.
Oh, sorry. I didn't hear the 10. Oh, wow, Grant. See, stuff like this, it's going on, but then to hear specific examples of kids being bullied like that at school is just horrendous, and it's happening right here.
I'll go back and say, just as you were semi-shocked, I'm innocent and naive and unaware. But I got told way back in let's say it could be 2000, but it could be even before that girls were giving boys head at school. So we're talking about recess and lunchtimes in those particular things. It was common. Now, I didn't see it. I didn't know about it, but that was what I was told on more than one occasion. So that's going back there. Now we have the indoctrination of the LGBTQ1A plus A, whatever it happened to be. I get thrown in there somewhere. Things are being changed, and children are being forced to be able to make a choice about what gender are there, and there's 100 genders. When are you going to go, and when are we going to stop this psychological abuse, and when are we going to stop making academia more important than well-being? When are we going to prioritize well-being?
Yeah.
All right.
The spiritual and emotional evolution over
and realize that children who are not affected by alcohol fetal syndrome are geniuses when they're born. And what we have through the schooling process and parenting process, in 99.99% of the time, I would say, you have the spirit of the child being put down. Is not the right word, but to be it gets
have
shrunk.
Their little lights dimmed. Have their
I'm saying that whole aspect of them is certainly negated, through that process. And if we consider what's important for children and make that the priority, then we do not need to teach anything. We do not need to tell them anything. I mean, you've got children. I don't know. I haven't found out.
No, I don't have kids.
Oh, but somebody's got a child, right?
I've got nieces and nephews and godchildren.
At some point, they get out of the nappy, and then they're there, and then at some point, they just go to the toilet, don't they? Now, a lot of the kids can go to the toilet before they go to school, to reception. Mm-hmm. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
But guess what? We've got to put a hand up. Can I go to the toilet? We've got control mechanisms. I saw a thing, and hey, look, I'll tell you about my control freak personality later on. But we've got children who are holding the shoulders of the person in front of them and they're walking into the classroom. All right. Now, that's effective, but effective does not mean liberated. Effective does not mean empowered. The empowerment of children is not there. So what we get from not having empowerment is that we get hospitals, because people are not interested in nutrition. Parents don't get to learn about it. They're not interested in it. But the school will put in something.
Home ec.
Home ec. You learn about that. Hang on. You've got a home. That's where home ec happens, right? You don't need a teacher to tell you about home ec. Now, grandma and grandpas or somebody may be able to cook food. Some people may be like me, and I was able to do cheese toasties. That is not very good for a child who's menstruating or starting to menstruate to be able to have that kind of food on a regular basis. All right. There needs to be something which gets human beings when they're young to understand what it means to bring a child into this world. And if you haven't come from a loving environment, which was my background's not that, then you don't have that knowledge. You haven't seen that enough to be able to then pass it on. And it's really important that we care for children, not just at school. You know, we care what's happening in the relationships they form prior to having sex, prior to living together, prior to being married. They have to understand what that is in a much deeper, meaningful way. And the girls need to be able to realise their bodies are their own, and the boys need to realise that they've got a bit of responsibility. It's a responsibility for life. And, you know, we don't understand that because it's all, you know, we grew up, you're a little bit younger than me, but we grew up in an instantaneous throwaway society. And that's just got worse and worse and worse. We've got kids at the moment who are taking guns into school, who are using knives. They feel as though they've got the right to be able to do this kind of stuff. And we don't care about what's happened to individuals in our society. We have courts that are not there for the person who is, let's say, committed a crime but wants to defend their rights. No, the court cases are being adjourned and adjourned and adjourned so that the court and the prosecutor, who are, they're a team, if you like, against the victim. And it's all to make money for both the magistrate and for the prosecutor. So there's no caring there. With the hospitals, we're talking about ramping and that type of thing in the past. It's just, okay, there was a problem and they're not able to do much about it. Well, there's a huge amount they could do about it, but they don't make the hard decision to be able to go do that. We have companies and they, you know, AI is what they're saying will come in. Well, hang on, if you ban AI, we have a world, all right? But if we take it as is at the moment, where we have some people, they employ overseas or they put 2 staff on when they could have 20. And we on the other end are asked to wait, and they solve that by say, okay, leave your number. So we're being trained to be able to interact with AI more and more and less with human beings. You know, we need to be able to value human life and what does human life require. And love is the number one thing. All right. People bandy around a word called hope. We don't need hope.
Love.
We need to generate, the love. But we need to be thankful, have gratitude, and a whole range of other things that emanate from the love, which is unconditional love. And so therefore, when you see homelessness, you then act upon it. Now, for those people watching, have I done anything about that? I've spoken to a couple of homeless people, and there's certain thing where you can't, if I had gone back there several times, maybe it might change. But they're in a situation that they want to stay in for certain reasons. But I just don't feel that anybody needs to have that scenario, because for me, I personally would be really scared. From that point of view, I don't mind.
If they're choosing it, obviously, if they're not choosing to be homeless, but if they're choosing to be homeless, well, I don't know, maybe things are that bad that is better than the alternative.
Well, yeah, like I'm not an expert on that, but I'm just saying we don't care as a society enough. And so there may be some places here in Adelaide that you can go to, but then they have a capacity, and the homelessness here, because of what our governments have done to be able to make us poor and dependent and that type of thing, more and more people are becoming homeless because they can't afford to make their mortgages.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's a big thing, isn't it?
It's a definite plan which is happening. Forget the definite plan. I'm just making the point that our society around the world does not care enough for human life.
So when it comes to teachers, I guess, you saw this as a teacher. There's 2 questions here. How did you keep teaching knowing what the system was really set up for? And the other question is there other teachers out there that are seeing this, and why are not more teachers saying something like you are? I
sold my soul. They're selling their souls. You just get a paycheck. That's it.
Thanks for your honesty. That's beautifully honest.
Well, you do that. I mean, when I said control freak before, as a maths teacher, I go through, let's say, an example. Might be good if there were some questions interaction, but I didn't create that thing there. So, okay, after going through an example or a couple of examples, so, okay, look, could you now go and do, and whether I write it up on the board or say it verbally, this question, etc. So I give people 10 seconds, 20 seconds, and then I'm on them. And, their time frame is 5 to 8 minutes before they would attempt to do some work. Right. And I'm talking about 10 years ago when I was last teaching. There's a group of year 12s. Yeah. So the main thing is that some people, they're in a profession for the wrong reasons. They don't have the skill set to be able to do it. As I said, yes, with Roger Federer or people who want to learn something, I would be brilliant. But with people who don't wish to be there, that are forced to be there, they're forced to do stuff that they don't even want to do, you've got to understand that they are doing all they can to survive as well. Those students are doing all they can to survive. And school, in a sense, is there as a social something. It may be there for drugs. It could be there for various other reasons. But the primary reason of learning that was set up from the adult point of view as a good thing is not why they're there.
So what's your message then, I suppose, to teachers that, not message, but what could you say to teachers that know, like you did, something's not right, it doesn't feel right, we really do want to create something better? What do you say to them if they are selling their soul and they're conscious of that? Because there's a lot that are unconscious about it, but the ones that are conscious about it, what would you say to them?
Well, again, it's their personal circumstances that they're there. My situation is that I don't have any valuables. I've had my valuables or my house stolen, not my house, but the contents and all that stolen. If people haven't gone through and lived certain experiences and got through that and realized that, hey, that's grace and thank you very much.
To learn the hard way, I had to learn it.
Yeah, they worry about the materialistic aspect of that. Okay, if one has to go and live in tent cities and stuff like that, you do it. What we haven't done is open our doors to let more and more people live in our homes.
Yeah.
I have asked that a couple of times, but I'm still not unconditionally doing that because I find it hard necessarily to live with somebody else because I've got to have that relationship with myself first. I may be getting there. In terms of teachers, if they could not be concerned about the fact they've got children and other responsibilities, etc., resign in numbers. So there are no teachers to teach the students. So schools, then the state says there's a problem. Okay, I resigned from 6 permanent teaching jobs in my life. If we can't be that radical, then
it should be great.
Speak to your peers and do something about it. There's a lot of things that they should be speaking up for right now. Do you realise that some teachers are being asked to go on yard duty and carry cat litters around?
No.
Are you aware of this, the woke agenda?
Yeah, I'm aware that there's
so part of
kids
that
identifying as cats and there's litters in class. I didn't know the teachers were walking around with them yard duty.
Well, that means that they can go to the toilet anywhere, because cats, that's what cats can do, right? My answer to that is if a person comes to school and says, I identify as a cat, that's great. You give them a collar and a leash. You then take them to the principal or somewhere else to stay there to be collected by the RSPCA or perhaps their parents or guardians. The schools are there for human beings. If you're a cat, sorry, this is not the place for you. End of story. But is that happening? No. But the teachers going around with cat litters to be able to do that. I mean, when you walk your dog and that type of thing, you take a plastic bag and you pick up all the stuff. I've only heard that, so I can't say I've seen it. It would be pretty amazing.
It's amazing that the teachers are doing this. Well, I don't get, I get it. I do. The mass formation psychosis, the blending in, all the stuff we've been brainwashed with is why they keep going along with it. But it's at a point now, it's like, come on. Like you're saying, get with your peers and have a conversation and
that's
work something else out.
But the reason it works is because of fear and what we have with the indoctrination, which is happening on a world scale. That's what Hitler did with youth. And the idea is to break up the nuclear family, et cetera, et cetera. The education department has got mandates in there which allow the teachers to be able to allow students who want to identify something to be identified that way. And in the event that the parent wants to buck up against that, the student can be taken away from their parents. That's happening here in Australia right now. You aware of that?
Yeah.
Now, that's not education. That's a political agenda which is being forced down. It has no place there. Gender identity And that type of stuff has no place in schools. Lots of other things don't have any place in schools. See, I was a maths teacher. Maths should not be taught at high school. I don't believe anything should be taught at high school, but children need to have the opportunity to opt in, not forced to do something. It's called, you realize it's called compulsory education. And that's why I said the homeschool people, well, they're supposed to operate according to some type of curriculum and work in there.
Yeah.
My two girls, I have 10 grandchildren, but the two girls have 7 children, and they homeschool them. So I was really pleased that they took that up. All of them? Yeah. They took that up and have done a fantastic job. And, you know, the love they showed coming more from my ex-wife's family is fantastic. So I'm really pleased for them. But they work within a curriculum, but it still makes a great effect on the children who get homeschooled, and there's various aspects of that, I suppose, that they do have an opportunity to express their own opinions. That they, you know, so much time is wasted in school through discipline, all right, or attempts at discipline. And I think that attempts part is the problem. So that we had, there's a person who glued themselves to a bridge here in Adelaide. And within 3 days, the government came down and said, okay, well, hang on, if you do that, they changed it from $750 fine to $50,000 fine or 3 months in jail. Anyway, the matter was within 3 days, they came up with a very, very dystopian solution. They did not allow society to have any involvement with that. It's all top-down stuff. Okay, that's what's happening here. Again, that's the education that I'm objecting to, is that the students are the last people to be considered. The adults in society, the last people can be considered. The big business, big pharma, the WHO, the World Economic Forum, our governments, the local council, federal government, they're the ones that seem to be able to dictate what's happening under something they call, we live in a democracy. We don't live in a democracy. This is a whatever you want to call it, is certainly not that at the moment. And children need to be able to grow up where freedom exists, freedom of ideas, freedom to be able to make decisions, freedom to be able to have things which are not politically correct. That politically correct term needs to be thrown out of the dictionary. They change words.
Marketing ploy. They use these marketing terms that just catch on and are really catchy. All
right, so maybe we should bring it back to specific about teaching. The other areas I'm interested in.
It's all connected, so it's fine. It's all connected, and this is the understanding, isn't it? It's not siloed. It's not about education. It's all connected, which is why it works so well. The whole system works so well because it's all connected.
Yes, and people out there should understand that you were being sarcastic then.
Sarcastic. Well, that the system's working. The system is working the way that they wanted it to work.
That's it.
Perfectly. Oh, yeah. You should know. Yeah, I'm being sarcastic in that sense. Yeah, it is working, just not for us, for the people that created it.
Now, one of the things that I'm trying to do is be able to reach out to parents so that parents are aware of what's happening. Okay, and this is kind of the work that you're doing. It's easy in primary school because they drop off and they get to meet other parents, and there's a lot more interaction. Okay. Because that's the nature of that. When students get a little bit older, they're high school, they're more, let's say, independent themselves, but they still get dropped off. But it's just bang, it's dropped off and gone. They picked up and gone, or catch a bus. You know, there's hardly any interaction. So we had one parent, I won't mention the name of the school, who back in August last year has gone and spoken to every teacher, the deputy and the principal, and has also presented to what's now called the governing body. Do you hear that term? Governing body. It used to be called a school council in my, when I remember from way back. It's now called governing. So now we have 4 governments: federal, state, local, school governing bodies. That term needs to be thrown out. We don't need governing bodies. That gives them this idea, you have the king and the nobles, and then you have the serfdom down here. We don't need this hierarchy. But so the point I'm trying to make about parents was that parents have the opportunity there, but in high school, you don't. If you're a parent and you have children at high school, please make greater contact with the school. I know they're sending out stuff, and apparently they're sending out heaps of material. That could be to wear people down so they don't see it. They don't read it, that type of thing. All right. And in there's something which they might mention. I don't know. That's a good conspiracy theory for later on.
I've spoken to Rose from Guardian's SA, and she said she's asked for everything to be sent paper delivered to her instead of emailed, so that she can make changes and she can see it. So parents can potentially ask for the communication to change because everything has gone online.
If it is possible, don't wait for parent-teacher nights. You didn't wait in primary school, but you didn't have so many people to contact. Whereas, there are more subjects there are subjects in primary school, but you have different teachers organising different subjects in high school. Yeah, so if you can have greater involvement. Now, the thing is, private schools and Catholic schools and that type of thing are supposed to be getting people from the state system, and I've read it's going the other way as well. But the idea of my experience, I taught in one private school, and I can't say that the interaction was any better, but because they're there, because the parents are paying the money and that type of thing, I believe they have a greater interest in the welfare of the child with respect to their education, the values.
Okay.
I think their values must align a lot better, whereas schools are there primarily in the state system for babysitting. That's their primary function.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And so in the thing where we changed from one parent looking after the kids and one parent earning money, and now it's two parents going off and they've now got to pay for babysitting and stuff like that. Like, that is not on. It sort of brings me to, I haven't made a full point there, but brings me to another thing is that, look, it'll happen with me all the time. And maybe I'll get around to thinking what my next point was that I wanted to share.
Yeah, you were talking about what parents can do. So what can parents do? So go and have chats with school. I guess some stuff that they can do. What can we leave them with? Like, summarize what you would suggest parents and or teachers do at this moment to get out of this system or to create something better. What do they do? What's some action items for them?
Well, one thing is to be able to know their child's teachers more personally. Mm-hmm. So have a personal relationship there prior to going in. At the moment, most of what I'd share here would be about negative things happening. There are children's rights are being overridden by the system and by the principals and that. And I believe that parents go in, and because it's an authority, because in schools you learn to trust the expert. You give your power away to the expert, the teacher. So you give it away to the policeman, you give it away to the magistrate, you give it away to the principal. So those people, you give it away to the boss or the boss's boss, whatever it happens to be. You automatically do that. Now, I'm not interested in boundaries for countries or titles. So from that point of view, when you go into the school as a parent, you are a human being. The other person on the other side of the desk, if that's how it ends up being, they're a human being as well. Speak to them at that level, but understand you have morals, specifically in this period of time, and those morals you're imparting upon your children is not to be taken away or altered or bastardized by the system. And you need to stand up for how you bring up your own child and say, this is how it is. Do not accept anything different. In terms of kids being suspended or expelled, that should happen way back when they are in reception. And if they cannot work with others, they should be put in that situation. They need to have something else happen, but not something which you call school. But the thing that needs to happen, and I'd like the parents to be able to advocate for this, is that children are egocentric. Have you noticed that with young children, that they're egocentric?
It's about them, all about them.
Yep. Okay. So what
I love
do we
it.
do?
They're so cute.
They go to kindy, they go to preschool, or they go to childcare. And guess what? Adult-centered has to be run on numbers, right? You go there and you have to compete for attention. And you just had mum and you, or whatever, or grandma and you, or whatever it happened to be. And now bang, there are all these other kids, and it's not fair. We need to have 1-on-1, 1-2, 1-3, or whatever it is, until they can handle 1-10, 1-16, or whatever the number happens to be. And then when they go to preschool, I'm not sure the numbers, but high school, it used to be 40. It could be more than that. Then it was
primary school's 30, 29 or 30.
Yeah, and that was about what it was trying to get down to in high school years back. But that number should be going up to, in high school, 200. It all depends on what size rooms you've got. You don't need to have 1 to 30 teaching maths. Like you have the introduction through the COVID pandemic, we had the children not being able to go to school, and school was continuing, and then people learned how to use this forum here to be able to have, like homeschooling, some lessons and that type of thing.
So basically, like what I'm hearing is we need parents to be more actively participating in their kids' lives. If they're still going to send them to school, actively participate in the school community, know the teachers, get involved, know what's going on as a bare minimum?
Mums are mums for life. Let's say dads, there may be lots of exceptions, but dads are, so, with the traditional thing of earning money, that's it. Kid goes to school, mum's going to look after it, pick her all up the slack at home and that type of thing, etc. But mums stay mums until they die. Their kids can be grown up and have children, that type of thing, but they still remain mums, right? It doesn't change. That's what I observed in life anyway. Yeah, so I really would like parents to have that greater involvement, and not just because they go to high school to say, take a breath, now we can have a holiday. That's not the end of the relationship. That's not your thing. You still have some involvement and interest in your life and the well-being of the family as such. It's really, really important that they show an interest at different times in that there, without, overdoing it, because the child finds that embarrassing and that type of thing. Well, I think you have to then have a conversation with the child about what does that mean and all that type of thing. How come you're being embarrassed, etc. I don't mean from a psychological, but at some point you need to be able to say, okay, there. But the school has this thing, like we have homes, we have fences around our homes, there are classrooms, and that is a little prison cell, or whatever you want to call it. But that's got a boundary, and it should be possible for people to come and go a little bit. But you don't need, in a high school environment, after so many years of conditioning in a positive sense, okay, to point out the positive sense, to have 30 people. You could have 100 or 2 or 1,000 people learn that same thing, but they might need to have tutors to help after the information.
Go and experience it. Go and experience what you've just learnt. Go and put it into real practice.
That's another aspect. I'm just talking about in terms of, okay, my poor way of, here's a theoretical question, now go and do the theoretical practicing, right? Okay, yes, it would be good to go into your stage of saying, how does this all relate, etc. And to me, that's based on a needs basis. If you happen to want something done as an adult, you get the job done. You either do it yourself, you learn how to do it yourself, you employ somebody, or you get some friends to come and help, and some of those people have that skill set. But you get the job done. You solve problems. We don't get kids to solve their own problems. We get to try and fix it. So there's a lot of masculine stuff where men want to go and fix things. Women do it a different way. But the men want, it's over and done with. I've dealt with that. That's what happens with the principals. There was in the paper in the Sunday Mail 3-4 weeks ago, it was about Nuriupta High School. Did you catch it?
No.
It was on page 4 of the Sunday Mail. And in there, something happened. There's a girl and there's several boys. And so it's a bullying kind of situation. The girl ends up being suspended, but the boys, I don't think, ended up happening. So that they were the people causing the problem, but the girl ends up being somehow punished with internal suspension. So it becomes aware, the minister gets to find out, he says, okay, maybe he's got confidence that the principal is doing the right, is sorting it all out. Okay, this is never the case, in my opinion. The minister has no idea what's going on. And if he did, he doesn't care. All he wants is to do this. There's a political kind of response that he gave that, it's all in hand, is my abbreviation to what was on that page 4 article, the way I choose to read it. I think there's a lot of truth in the fact that people can't trust the governments and politicians. And in this particular case, the Minister of Education, do not trust him, because in that particular school is not the only place where, let's say it's just bullying, not sexual bullying. I can't remember what it was about. It's not the only place.
No.
And he did it as an isolated response. He didn't say, okay, I'll investigate more, I'll do something. I'll leave it with this person. And the article's been written, or there was a complaint put in by somebody, or whatever it be. Hence, it becomes a bit of news. It's written by a reporter in the Advertiser, the Sunday Mail. And the minister's now been asked for comment and makes a comment. But that comment is that
flyaway comment.
That'll do. Thank you. Yeah, I was going to use an instantaneous, but it's not the right word. Yeah, just a diversionary tactic, just something to be able to quell there. But it doesn't. There's no substance. We don't care enough, and if we take the time to care, then people don't have to become criminals. If a child goes and takes something at age 11, and then what we want is to interrupt their pattern. Let's not say how that happened, but if the interruption occurs and it's meaningful and the child gets that it's meaningful, then there's less likely, I'm talking about some type of study that was done, it's less likely that they're going to go down that path where they go to jail at some point in their lives.
Mm-mm.
All right. If we intervene early there. So I'll give you an example of something that was done bad by me. I'm on yard duty in a northern R12 school at that time, and there's this kid takes somebody else's lunch. And so I'm there. I've seen this gross, in my opinion, gross problem. I then discipline in my way, whatever I did, whether I refer to anybody else, I don't know, most probably not. But that poor child was hungry. The one who was bullying was hungry.
Oh.
Right? Did I have any compassion? Was
Did
that
you know?
something that I, being introduced to the school, should have been aware of? Children shouldn't go hungry. But if they do, they have needs. So you can't go and teach in schools. And that's why, whether it's America or England, somewhere and I don't know whether it happens here, but there are breakfast programs, right?
I've seen that. Yeah.
Okay. Now, those breakfast programs may not be putting something in their bodies, which is good. That's another story. But at least there's something there. But if they have something there, they can get through the day. But they can't get through the day if they've been beaten or they've seen something or some trauma has happened in their lives, because they're not there. To me, we need to stop making that kind of compulsory learning important.
So we're seeing a big change, though. You must see a big change over the last 20 years, 30 years since you've been doing this, Grant. Like, these conversations are happening more often now. There's more parents homeschooling or unschooling or natural learning, whatever you want to call it. There's more of that happening. How do you see the future? How do you see the future? Well,
the future is that we have to be able to have the WHO, the World Economic Forum, the UN, non-existing. We have to be able to have Labor and Liberal non-existing, that those parties in Australia are one party, basically. But the point is, the system we have called democracy is two bulls fighting each other. If you're a Fortune 500 company, you do not have on your board this and this. You have one leader, and then you have your board, and you all have a vision, and goals and bottom lines and that type of thing. Whatever, everybody is unified in that process, and they are supposedly rewarded for, with lots of money and that type of thing, for achieving certain outcomes. We don't do that in here. We have combatant stuff, so that's okay with going back to the 13th century, 14th century, and you have that is a way of operating. But we need to be able to change that system. Now, in terms of the education department, I don't know how many of them, but I would say those that are making decisions, and they might have various heads in lots of things. Certainly the education complaints unit most probably is not working exceptionally well, but they may be hamstrung. But whatever it is, most of that should be that they should lose their positions. Then, if anything is changed, we have to replace it with something which is going to be feasible. It's going to work, right? We can't have a revolution or anything like that, because history has just shown you that you only just get despots to replace despots.
If you're going to replace it with something just as bad, we need to create something with better intentions, better for the people, for the kids, with their best interest at heart, versus making money or controlling or greed. Right.
You might have something in mind, so just share it with me. But you have this where the adults do something for the kids. I would like the kids to be able to just be kids and ask questions, explore, use their imagination. We know about imagination, creativity.
Oh, no, I agree. I totally agree.
That stuff. But the leading part, it's got to be up to them. You don't tell them how to play a game. They play the game of themselves. And when they go and join with other people, okay, then they've got to kind of work that out, and they start to do that. But at some point they say, I like this, I don't like that. I may have spoken to you before and mentioned about my daughter with the baked beans. She's eating baked beans, and it's all coming down the chin. It's over here on the bib, and she takes the plate, throws it on the floor, because we wanted her to finish her plate. I don't know whether you ever got told that as a child, finish your veggies.
Yeah, finish everything.
Have the ice cream or whatever.
She finished it.
She finished it. The kids know how to go to the toilet. Kids know when they're hungry.
How to walk, how to crawl.
Right. Kids can do a whole lot of stuff that we don't give them credit for. But unless they have the opportunity to be able to do that, and we respect that a little bit, we're not going to be able to sort of do much. Now, what that looks like, etc., in terms of the system, I'm not sure. I don't see the system. What I want if anything, is centres of learning excellence. The word schools needs to go, the word education needs to go. But what I would like to be able to see is something that's to replace schools. They need to be centres of learning excellence. From that point of view, mastery is important. We have people that go from reception to year 1, 2, 3, up to year 12, and then post that's all based around going to university. In the past, you were stigmatized if you were 11 and the rest of the people were 8 because you got failed 3 times. All right. Now, this pass and failure business is unnecessary when you have mastery that you have to get 10 out of 10 for something. It's just a skill. Learn how to do that. You can have, driver's license. People have to do something. They do it. Job done. Now, they can have as many opportunities to do it. The thing is, whatever they choose to do, I repeat that, whatever they choose to do, they get 10 out of 10 for, because they want that and they will get it. But they don't have to go and do this and this and this and, anything set by anybody else. Yeah. And then, of course, morally, it's got to be healthy that they make these choices. But, whatever it is that floats their boat, as much as possible, we should give them and their parents and their grandparents and their families the opportunity to have some involvement in that process. It should not be in isolation. And then it needs to also involve the community. You don't have to have everything at the school environment to say that that's schooling. If learning is what's important, then it doesn't matter that there's a building. So it could look totally different, but at some point we need to be able to say, okay, have not a 3-year plan, which is, I'm talking about political time periods, but we need to look for 10,000 year plan. If we say, what is the potential of human beings? How does that arise? What is genius? What are loving parents? How do they become that? All that type of stuff. Those kind of conversations, and do some investigation into that and have greater agreement. That would be really, really important. I'd love to be able to see that. That could be a 5-year process, whatever. I don't think it should be much more than that. But
beautiful.
In education
Sounds
from the 70s, we had every 3 years a new plan. There was something there. So somebody comes into the education department, they've got a job, they've got a title, they have to do something. So you invent something. It's the nature of who we are. So even if it wasn't there, they'll come up with something, and they did. And then you had various things, girls in sport or girls in something. There are various things that came up and are still coming up now, which keeps and destabilizes the environment. It doesn't need to have this fast change.
Well, it sounds good. We want to create something better than what's currently here, and these are all great suggestions and steps to make that happen.
So in summary...
summarise it for us. In closing, Grant, how would you like to summarise?
Advocate for letting children play and be kids and that type of thing. Malinowskis wants to be able to have 3 to 5 year universal education. Another thing of compulsory education. Please object to that strongly, pass the word, because he's trying to break down the nuclear family even more. Please have good relationships with your teachers. Don't trust that everything will be okay. Not because you're suspicious, but because you care. Take the time, a half day off of work. Go meet them, all right? Don't wait for a parent-teacher night, something official. Keep it friendly right from the beginning of the year. Yes, teachers are going to be busy and that type of thing, but as you can, see if you can have a 5-minute or 2-minute interaction with them, and then arrange to see them during the year. An ongoing relationship, because if you have a good relation with that teacher's going to think better of your child. It's just how it works. And most importantly, is for parents, is to be able to have positive, loving relationships with their children, and to be interested in what they want in life and help them make good decisions, by allowing them to know what they might need to consider, good decisions about their choices that they're going to make inside school, outside school. So if you've got an open communication between you and the child, then the child's obviously going to have a greater ability to withstand bullying, to be able to handle the information, the feedback that comes back, which is negative, which is you are either an A student, a B student, a C student, or you've got a certain percentage of this, or you've passed or failed, and that sort of thing. All of that is somebody's opinion, and the only opinion that counts is the child's, the students, about themselves.
Beautiful. Thank you, Grant. That was beautiful. Thanks for sharing. So much. There's so much knowledge there and experience that you've had. So thank you so much for spending the time to have a chat with me about it. Thank you.
Oh, very, very nice to be able to sort of do that. A lot easier than I thought it was going to be. So thank you very much for you being you. And that's the same for everybody. Be
Beautiful.
yourself.
Thanks, Grant.
Bye-bye.